This is a strike and this is a ball. And this is an ejectable offense in Major League Baseball.
We got a very clear, well, there you go. And now Aaron's saying, I didn't say.
In 2024, umpires have been off to what many have been calling the worst start to the season ever. And the worst part is, they aren't even really needed anymore. Umpires have been a major piece of the sport's history dating all the way back to the 1800s, and it definitely made sense back then because computers didn't exist and cars looked like this. However, with modern technology, there are potentially better alternatives that are being tested in the minors as we speak. And with umpires having an all-time bad start to the season, it seems like those changes may be coming to the big leagues sooner rather than later. Well, maybe. Human umpires do have one upper hand on the robots, and it's not calling games correctly, that's for sure. It's that their job security is higher than Jeff Bezos at Amazon. If you don't understand that reference, they cannot be fired, basically no matter what they do. If they mess up 30% of their calls in a game, oops. If they cost a pitcher a perfect game because they failed an obvious call at first base, that's okay. Or if they eject a manager because a fan in the front row shouted something that somewhat hurt the umpire's ego, there's nothing wrong with that either. This is because of MLB's Umpire Association, which is very similar to the union that the players have to protect them and make sure that the league and owners aren't taking too big of an advantage over them. The umpires have the same right. The Umpires Association is basically a workers' union that helps the umpires have as little accountability as humanly possible. If not for them, there would be much bigger punishments for being this guy. However, since they are unionized, they basically have unlimited job security. Umpires can be penalized, however, even if those penalties are small in comparison to what they could be. If an umpire is horrible at their job, instead of getting fired like a real job, they just don't get promoted. There can be very rare instances where umpires can be demoted back to the minor leagues to learn how to call games better, but that's extremely rare and almost never happens to the veteran umpires that we all know deserve to be demoted. For the most part, bad umpires just live in a limbo, where they work half the year calling Major League Baseball games and getting a minimum salary of $300,000, which is only 2.5 times less than the player's minimum salary. Really seems like a major punishment to me, only making $300,000 to call balls and strikes incorrectly. Oh man, what a tough life. The umpire that we all know and love to make fun of, Angel Hernandez, is one of the funniest umpires to listen to their story, and just how damn strong this union must be for this man to still have a job. However, I'm gonna make you wait on that one for a minute longer. The final note I have on the union before moving on to Angel is that the last 3 presidents of the union have been John Hirschbeck from 2000 to 2009, Joe West from 2010 to 2018, and Bill Miller from 2019 to the present day. The former of the two I personally know as not the most respected umpires ever, with Joe West consistently receiving major amounts of criticism before retiring a few years ago. And Bill Miller is less known, however, he's equally bad. I was curious about Hirschbeck, so I looked up, is John Hirschbeck a good umpire? And the first result I was greeted with was titled John Hirschbeck and the League's Growing Umpire Problem. So that's probably not the greatest sign ever. Okay, you guys want Angel Hernandez. I know. We all know that Angel Hernandez is the epitome of a terrible umpire and the ultimate sign that anything is possible. If a blind man can umpire, you can do pretty much whatever you want. Angel started his umpire career in 1991, where there wasn't too much bad media about him. This lasted all the way until 1999, where he was ranked 31st out of 36 umpires. According to polls which were voted on by the players, he was considered the 3rd worst umpire in 2006 and 2011, and in 2010 he was voted the worst by 22% of players. In a study done by Boston College, in a 2-year span, Angel had an average of 19 missed calls per game, which was actually better than 10 other umpires. That's insane. Now, luckily Angel Hernandez was never promoted to crew chief, because he's not that great. However, he thinks that he is great and has said that he only misses 4 calls per game. so he deserves to be a crew chief. I think I'm gonna believe the Boston College report more than Angel Hernandez saying what he thinks, personally. Because we already know he doesn't think the correct thing most of the time, so why would I believe him here? And he believed this so much that he sued Major League Baseball for not promoting him for racism. This is an actual lawsuit that went down. And the worst part is, he still has a damn job. Like, what? How can you sue your boss for racism and keep your job? This union must have $17 trillion or something. I don't get it. In 2023, he was considered the worst umpire in baseball after only appearing in less than half the season. And he called the worst game in over 5 years behind the plate on September 14th, where he had an incredible 65% accuracy. He missed 1 out of every 3rd pitch. And right now, I'm just showing you some of the incorrect calls. They're not even close. This is just brutal. How does this happen? Okay, enough Angel Hernandez. At least he's the worst umpire out of all of them, right? Oh God, please tell me that's right. Well, it's probably wrong. So far in 2024, there are 20 umpires that have a worse correct call rate behind the plate than Angel. 20 umpires are doing worse than Angel, and some of those guys are known bad umpires like Larry Vanover, who was the 2nd worst last year too, CB Buckner, Laz Diaz, and Hunter Wendelstadt, who very recently decided he wanted to become more well-known than he once was. Let's move on to Wendelstadt and another major issue with umpires. They can do whatever they want, whenever they want. And they don't even have to care. Ejections are one of the ways that an umpire can make sure that the coaches or players don't get too unruly throughout a game. If a coach or player is ejected, they must leave the field and cannot come back no matter what throughout the rest of the game. This is a power that every umpire is given to use at whatever time for whatever they feel fit. If they want to toss you because you swore at them, they can. If they want to because you threw your equipment in frustration, they can. If they want to toss you because the fan above your head said get it together home plate, they can do that too. This is another major flaw with umpires. We've seen multiple times umpires get power trips and then eject people for a reason that was obviously not justified. Joe West was an umpire that seemed to enjoy getting himself into drama that would lead to him ejecting people. He did it literally all the time. There are countless clips and compilations on YouTube of Joe West just ejecting people for no reason. I'll play a couple of them now because it's fun. Aaron Boone was thrown out earlier this week because of a fan saying that the umpire was bad. Literally, that's all that happened. It wasn't a controllable thing for Aaron Boone. It was a fan, not one of his players, nothing else. After the game that Hunter Wendelstadt ejected Aaron Boone for something that a fan said, instead of owning up and taking responsibility like an actual adult would, he decided to double down on his take, saying Aaron Boone is the manager of the New York Yankees and is responsible for everything that happens in that dugout. I don't want to eject the ball player, we need to keep them in the game. That's what the fans pay to see. Aaron Boone runs the Yankees, he got ejected. Apparently what he said was there was a fan right above the dugout. This isn't my first ejection. In the entirety of my career, I have never ejected a player or a manager for something that a fan has said. I understand that that's going to be part of a story or something like that because that's what Aaron was portraying. I heard something come from the far end of the dugout, had nothing to do with his area, but he's the manager of the Yankees, so he's the one that had to go. So in this quote, he admits that Aaron Boone is not the one that should have been ejected. However, he did it anyway because like he said on the field, he does not care. And he doesn't have to care because he won't get punished. The league today did say that they are disappointed in how this was handled and that they are upset because this was not a proper ejection. However, it doesn't matter. They're just gonna act like a disappointed father. They're just gonna say, well, we're disappointed in you, Hunter. Oh well, move on, and that's what'll happen. That's the entirety of the drama. It's just really not a good look. And the issue is, what the umpire says goes almost all the time. The only time something can be changed is with the challenge system, which allows you to call into a video replay booth in New York to confirm or deny whether the umpire was right or wrong with his call. Hypothetically, if the umpire was wrong, the call gets overturned and the correct call is made on the field. Although, literally as I'm writing the script, there was one of the worst non-overturn calls I've ever seen, and the announcers were absolutely over it.
Foot is on the base, and then the tag. It's just unbelievable.
Even announcers paid by the league to keep quiet can't handle it anymore. That's the state that the umpires are in. And for some reason, this is not the only non-challengeable thing. There are many limitations to where it can be applied. If the ball is fair or foul on the infield, that can't be challenged. Or if there's a balk made, that is just another one of the examples of something that cannot be challenged. And like I said, there are many other examples. Way too many to talk about right now because it's a lot. Another thing that simply cannot be challenged no matter what are balls and strikes. And this also applies for check swings, which our good friend Angel Hernandez made one of the worst calls of all time on earlier this season, saying that this was a swing when obviously it wasn't. Whatever the umpire says it is. And like I said, it's the same thing with check swings, which also cause an insane amount of controversy because there's barely even an official rule of what a check swing is. Every umpire kind of thinks it's a different thing. MLB has started testing out a challenge system in minor league baseball recently, which allows a catcher or pitcher to challenge a ball or a strike, like you would if it was on the base paths. And it's gone well throughout its first few months under development. This should really be making its way into Major League Baseball as soon as possible, in my opinion. Baseball is already a random game as it is. Umpires should not be a huge factor, which they often are, in determining who wins or loses a game on the biggest stage. And because I want to just really hammer home how bad some of these umpires have been this year, let's just take a look at some of the worst umpiring moments of the season so far. And don't forget, we're only like 25 days into the season. Let's just see how bad it's really become.
Out. Oh, whoa. Where is that?
For the one time Gonzalez in his career pitched, my.
And then he throws it. I mean, that was very, very clear. Lance Barksdale's the 2-2. You have got to be kidding me.
Foot is on the base, and then the tag. It's just unbelievable.
Fastball is right down the middle for ball one.
It's just brutal. These calls some of them are just so bad. And sure, it does give MLB more publicity. Watching an umpire make a terrible call and then seeing the manager explode on him until he gets ejected and then screams even more is one of the biggest mass appeals of the sport. However, these players are paid billions of dollars overall to impact a game with their talents. We should allow them to do that because currently you could argue that an umpire making $300,000 behind home plate could easily impact a game more than Mike Trout making $40 million. MLB has one of the biggest issues in all of sports, and it's this little motion right here, which can be done by any umpire at any point in any game. This motion, as I'm sure we all know, ejects a player, meaning they are forced to leave the game and can no longer play or sit in the dugout. Obviously, this can be a huge disadvantage for the team losing a player, especially if the player happens to be a superstar or even worse, a starting pitcher early in the game. So obviously there are set ejection rules, right? Wrong. We've seen multiple players ejected for countless reasons that seem a little ridiculous, and sometimes umpires are just having a bad day and start throwing people out, like this one ejection to Bryce Harper that happened a few weeks ago where he seemed to be calmly talking to the umpire before getting thrown out of the game. However, there are much worse ejections in MLB history. You can get ejected for literally anything at any point. You can get ejected on the second pitch of a game. You can get ejected while walking away from the umpire. You can get ejected without saying a single word. You can get ejected because the umpire doesn't like the way you tried to receive the ball from his hands. Umpires basically have ultimate power in this situation, and many times it's used in a way that is obviously not intended by Major League Baseball. Not only does this ruin games on the field, but it can also completely destroy fan experience. If you only have the money to go to one game a year and your kid's favorite player is Bryce Harper, and then he is ejected 15 minutes into the game that can be heartbreaking for a child. Oh, and even fans aren't safe from the ejection hammer because they too can be thrown out of a game if they're acting too unruly. And of course, this is just according to the umpire with zero review or with any other person stepping in. It's just one man's opinion. Let's talk about how one single motion is ruining Major League Baseball. In 1989, MLB changed the rules to allow ejections to be something that an umpire could do, due to players getting too unruly and not really having a way to control them other than fining the players. The first player ejected ever in a Major League Baseball game was Dave Orr after screaming at the third base umpire. One day in 1984, the record amount of ejections happened in a single day, where 18 people were ejected in just one calendar day. This is because 17 people were ejected in one single game after a brawl that obviously got a lot of players thrown out. There have been over 20 ejections in the World Series, although none over the past 28 years. Imagine getting tossed in probably the biggest game of your life in the last series of the season because of arguing a call that the umpire was probably wrong about in the first place. Absolutely crazy stuff. But we don't really care about the history of ejections. We all know what they are. Let's look at some of the single worst ejections that have ever happened in Major League Baseball history to really understand just how bad some of these ejections are. Also, subscribe to my channel because I'm skipping the history lesson and getting straight into the good stuff. So thanks, and subscribe to thank me. Players consistently get ejected for throwing their equipment on the ground. Normally you're allowed to do that, but if the umpire knows that they made a bad call earlier in an at-bat that resulted in an out, sometimes the umpire thinks that the slammed equipment is really frustration with a bad call by the umpire. With that being said, of course sometimes a player may scream a profanity while slamming their stuff down, but we don't always know these things since there's not always hot mics to allow us to hear the conversations happening on the field. Do you guys remember when Hall of Famer Adrian Beltre was ejected because he didn't want to stand on the on-deck circle that he thought was too close to the plate and he didn't want to get hit with a foul ball? One of the biggest selling points of going to that game was because Adrian was just a few hits away from 3,000 career hits, which is obviously an extremely big deal. So fans were showing up like crazy that week to try to watch some history in person. However, they were robbed of that chance because an umpire got extremely hurt that Beltre didn't exactly listen to what he said. Beltre was very sarcastically moving the on-deck circle and was 100% trying to somewhat show up the umpire, but given the situation and the fact that nothing was malicious and it was obviously just a joke, for a player that absolutely loved to joke around on the field, was Beltre really justified to get ejected here? I don't think so at all, but maybe you disagree. Let me know in the comments section. One ejection that I can surely say is completely unjustified is JT Realmuto getting ejected in a spring training game after asking for a new baseball. However, the umpire took a few extra seconds and JT pulled away his glove, and then the ball fell out onto the ground. Unfortunately, the umpire woke up on the wrong side of the bed and decided that JT was trying to show him up, which very obviously he was not. Another absolutely ridiculous ejection was when Christian Walker and his dugout was slightly unhappy with a check swing call early in an at-bat. A few pitches later, an actual check swing was called, so the call was a ball. Celebrating the fact that his teammate is now in a better count, Walker lightly clapped. However, I don't know what the umpire could have possibly thought, but clearly he thought Walker was showing him up. So he ejected him while he was in the dugout, which absolutely shocked Walker. Aaron Boone, the Yankees manager, absolutely loves to get ejected constantly. Like, at least a few times a month. He just has to get ejected, or I don't know, who knows, he just needs to. It's the only way. However, one time he was barking at the umpire. The umpire then said, if you say another word, you're gone. So he just didn't speak anymore. However, a fan above him did, and that was enough for the umpire to think that someone in the Yankees dugout was yelling at the umpire. So he ejected Aaron Boone, even though after the game he said he didn't think Boone was the one that was actually talking, but he didn't want to eject a player from the game. A slightly older but still just as ridiculous ejection came back when John Lackey was making his first start in over 6 weeks after coming back from the injured list. His first pitch went behind Ian Kinsler. His second pitch drilled Kinsler in the ribs. However, this was obviously unintentional because it was his first start and only 2 pitches in, so obviously he was just lacking a little control. Not to the umpire, however, as Lackey was thrown out of the game as he deemed it was intentional without any warnings. After the game, Lackey said he was still stunned and he said he was trying to pitch inside. But because he was amped up since it was his first start, he lost some control and unintentionally drilled Kinsler. And like, if you understand baseball at all, which clearly this umpire did not, you will know that this was as unintentional as it gets. Well, maybe slightly more intentional than this one. Orioles pitcher Kevin Gausman was ejected after throwing a slow looping curveball that drilled Xander Bogaerts right in the thigh. This was a very slow curveball and obviously was not the pitch to get retaliation on. Probably didn't even hurt Bogaerts. However, the umpire once again deemed this intentional and threw Gausman out of the game, which is truly insane. This does at least have some reasoning behind it, however, because this is soon after Manny Machado, who was an Oriole at the time, slid into Dustin Pedroia and ended up injuring him. So Matt Barnes threw at Machado's head, and then Chris Sale threw inside on Machado multiple times. And because this was right after those games and these were the same teams, there were warnings prior to this game handed out. However, this was obviously not intentional, so the warning should not have mattered in this situation because you still are only supposed to eject a player if it's obviously intentional. And like I said prior, clearly this was not intentional. I have one more Red Sox ejection that I really love. Alex Cora, the manager, went out to discuss a foul ball which he thought was a home run. After replay confirmed the ball was still foul, Cora wanted to know a little more about why the call remained a foul ball. The umpire told him and then asked if Cora wanted to get ejected to fire up his team. Cora said, "No, I don't want to get ejected for this," and then he got ejected anyway because the umpire thought he said he did want to be ejected. The look on Cora's face after he was thrown out is just priceless. We also have a few other great ejection moments where Justin Turner got ejected inside of the Dodgers dugout after saying hi to the umpire after he told him if he said one more word he would be tossed. Apparently, Justin saying hi was enough to set the umpire over the edge, which is just truly hilarious and shows how fragile some of these egos really are. And Anthony Rendon once got ejected after taking off his batting gloves, standing at home plate, and looking back at the umpire. Then, without saying one word, he got ejected for seemingly no reason. Obviously, there are many ejections that are more than justified. If a player intentionally throws at another player, or fights someone, or charges on the field to scream at the umpire, or whatever, there are many true reasons. But right now, there just needs to be some changes to make these true reasons more, and the fake reasons, they just gotta go away. They can't be here anymore. The ump show needs to stop. It's not fair to the paying customers. While I talk about some of the ways to change how these umpires handle ejections, I'll throw a few more unjustified ejections onto the screen that I just didn't have time to talk about. But there are many more ejections that are worth the watch because of just how stupid they truly are. With that being said, how can MLB hold their umpires more accountable and truly make an ejection worth it instead of just an umpire having a short fuse and almost immediately ending someone's game without even hesitating? Well, how about we start by making the umpires come together before an official ejection is thrown out? So if a player starts yelling at an umpire, they will come together and decide if the player used enough bad words or said enough bad things to then get ejected. If it's an obvious offense, this can be a very quick solution and they just all go, "We saw it," and then he's done. He's ejected, that's that. However, for something like Beltre moving the on-deck circle, there's a good chance that the other 3 umpires on the field would be like, "You might be being a little too harsh for throwing out a player there considering the situation." This would definitely help some of the more ridiculous ejections that should have never happened in the first place. Another solution here could be the ability to challenge and overturn an ejection. In the Cora case, the umpire literally thought that Cora wanted to be ejected. So Cora should be able to challenge. MLB reviews the footage, and if they find that Cora didn't do anything substantial enough to be ejected, Then the call is overturned and he gets to remain on the field. I think that this could really help some of the power trip umpires that ruin the game for fans that show up. Also, an umpire should never realistically be allowed to eject a fan. That should be handled by the stadium security and the officers in the crowd. An umpire is not a legal official and should not be allowed to act on a paying customer and take away their ability to witness something that they paid for with their own money. That's just my opinion on that. Let me know what you think about these solutions in the comments, and let me know what your favorite ridiculous ejection is. And finally, watch another video if you're interested. One will be on the screen right now. MLB umpires have once again found a new way to ruin baseball games. I've already made a video on both home plate umpires sucking, as well as umpires being way too excited to eject players and coaches, and now we are going to be talking about the absolute failure that is the MLB replay system. This is a pretty simple system that MLB and umpires just cannot seem to get right, even though this truly is one of the more simple concepts in baseball. For example, does this ball hit the batter or not? The call on the field was no, but after being able to see the replay, you can see that the batter very clearly got clipped by the pitch, which the umpires in New York were able to fix after seeing the replay as well. All is good and the runner gets to go to first base. These challenges can be initiated by a manager after feeling as if a play was close enough to take a chance on. You only have one challenge in the regular season per game, and if you lose the challenge, you lose it for the rest of the game. If you get it right, you get another one. So using your challenge early in a game can be a very big risk. And all of this is good, right? This helps to prevent things like the Galarraga perfect game snub from happening again. And to be fair to Jim Joyce and every other umpire on the planet, it's almost impossible to make these calls on the spot, and this applies for home plate umpires as well. In theory, yes, this system is an awesome compromise to make umpires still extremely important, but also making their job a little more fair and can allow a mistake they make to not completely ruin an inning for a team and potentially even ruin the outcome of a game. However, I did say this is a great concept in theory, and that's because currently there have been some major flaws in execution, especially with what's been happening during the MLB postseason. Let's look at this Trey Turner pickoff for example. Immediately, he's called safe by the umpire, which is perfectly fine. The umpire is behind the player, so his view is blocked, and the play is so extremely close that it's almost impossible to tell in live time. However, after careful slow motion replay, you can tell that Trey Turner is almost definitely out as the first baseman applies the tag to his hip before the hand is back on the base. So the umpire calls him safe? Well, how could this possibly be? We literally just saw Trey Turner was out, but the umpires in New York with hundreds of camera angles couldn't tell themselves why. Well, let's see the official rules on what makes a call overturnable. Number 1, if the umpire finds clear and convincing video evidence that the original call was incorrect, the call will be overturned. Number 2, if the umpire finds no clear evidence to overturn a call, the call stands. Number 3, if there is clear proof that the call on the field was correct, the play will be confirmed. Now, there is one word that is continued among all 3 of these lines, and that word is clear, making this the most important word of the bunch. If there is no clear evidence either way, a call cannot be confirmed or overturned, which means that the original call must stand. And this is even if they cannot say that this is the right call or the wrong call, it's just what was called, so that's what they're keeping it. So in Trey Turner's case, the call was not overturned or confirmed because they simply were not 100% sure, meaning that the call must remain what it was on the field. With that being said, if the umpire had called Trey Turner out, then he would have remained out. This creates a serious potential issue that feels like it's only getting worse each year. What is clear and concise evidence? Personally, I would say that this freeze frame right here is about as clear as you're going to ever ever get. The glove is touching Trey Turner's body while Trey Turner's hand is not touching the base. This means he should be out, but once again, he remains safe. If the rule is to fix the umpire's mistakes in the first place, why do we value the calls so highly that it has to be blatantly obvious for them to be wrong for it to be overturned? If we are making this rule so that umpires do not have as much power in getting a call wrong, shouldn't the original call not matter at all? And since Trey Turner was almost definitely out at least, and at best very clearly out, shouldn't we just assume he was out instead of valuing the exact call that is in question anyway? This is a serious flaw in the system that the rules seem to just overlook. The call is thought to be wrong by at least one of the two managers, but the league basically uses the innocent until proven guilty strategy with replay, which makes calls like this Trey Turner call remain correct for basically no reason when everyone watching can tell that he's probably out. Either way, enough about this Trey Turner call. Let's look at some other horrible calls because that's what you're here for, and don't worry, I've got plenty more, including 2 more from the same day as this Trey Turner one. Oh yeah, and once again, this is a playoff game, so these other 2 are as well. For this play in the Dodgers-Padres game, Freddie Freeman steals second base, but it definitely seems like he overslides second base and isn't touching the base while Cronenworth is still applying the tag. This one is very close. This is one of the ones where I can understand not overturning because, again, it is extremely close. I do think there is a second where Freddie Freeman's leg is not touching the base, and I think the way that Freddie Freeman reacts makes this even more likely as he very quickly tries to reach over with his hand to stop from sliding off the base, and Cronenworth is definitely tagging him before that hand is back on the base. So personally, I think Freddie Freeman was most likely off the base here. Again, this one's very difficult to overturn in my opinion. However, it's the same day as the Trey Turner one and this next one, so you kind of have to throw it in there just to say all 3 of them, they're kind of linked together. Personally, I think this safe call on this Jazz Chisholm Jr. stolen base attempt is the worst one of the 3 because there were just multiple angles that you see on the broadcast that show there's almost a 0% chance that he's actually safe. His foot, mainly his heel, is not touching the base. He's off to the right side, the tag is applied on the top of his foot, and his heel is not touching the corner of the base. I do not care what you say, he's not touching the base in this shot or this shot. He slid to the right of the bag and he wasn't touching it, and he was tagged, so he should be out. And even if there's a 1% chance that he's safe, that's clear enough for me, he's out. With that being said, let's just move on to some of the other bad ones and get a little bit less in depth in them, but just show you what I'm talking about. Actually, I'm changing my mind really quick. Let's talk about this Jose Altuve one first, really quick, because this highlights another example that's another major issue with the replay system. And that's not every play can be reviewed for some reason, especially some really obvious ones. Jose Altuve undeniably fouls a ball off of his foot. The umpire says he does not, the play is ran, Altuve is out. This is the 9th inning with a runner in scoring position in a tie game late in September. This is a huge spot and Altuve just got robbed. He hit his foot with this baseball. It is undeniable, but this play was not reviewable. For some reason, you cannot review whether a ball hit a body part or not. So because of that, Altuve wasn't able to challenge. He was called out. He took off his sock. He got ejected because he was literally showing that his toe was bruised. The umpires couldn't do anything about it. He's out. They move into the next inning. Now, the next inning wasn't any better because Jerickson Profar very clearly did not get hit by a baseball. However, the home plate umpire said that he got hit by a baseball, and then after going to replay, they confirmed that he was hit by a baseball. Well, they didn't confirm it because it didn't happen, but they somehow didn't have clear evidence that he didn't get hit by a baseball, so the call stood. Except in the most basic MLB camera angle, I have clear and concise evidence that he was not hit by a pitch because my eyes were open, and because of that, that means I was able to see. And because I was able to see, I know that Jerickson Profar was not hit by a pitch. However, the umpires in New York did not come to that same conclusion. decision. Pretty mysterious if you ask me. So this one between the Rangers and the White Sox happened last season, but I have to talk about it because it's just so damn stupid that it has to be mentioned in this video. The go-ahead run in the 8th inning is called out on a throw from left field. He's very clearly out. Even on replay, you can tell he's out. However, he's called safe. And why is that? Because you're able to review whether or not the catcher was blocking the plate. Now here, the catcher was not blocking the plate. I'm sorry, I don't care what the rule says, the catcher was not blocking the plate. He was standing on the back part of the plate, but the front part of the plate was wide open for a hand to swoop in and touch. He did not touch it because he was out. The fact that they overturned this and confirmed that he was blocking the plate is absurd. Absolutely absurd. Horrible call. Needs to be mentioned here. I hate this one. This is another one from 2023. I can't stand this one. It makes me so mad. William Contreras is running out a ground ball and the pitcher is covering first base. William Contreras touches the base before the pitcher. I do not care if you cannot fully see the pitcher's heel. You can look on two angles at the same time and you can tell that the pitcher is not touching the base. This one actually makes me so angry. It's so conclusive to me and to everyone watching. I know it's conclusive to you. He is not out. He is safe. The runner touched the base before the pitcher, therefore he is safe. I hate this one so much. Okay, now I'm just gonna start getting mad because I'm getting to the ones that I cannot even fathom. This is the most transfer I have ever seen on a baseball field. If you don't know the transfer rule, basically if you have like possession of the ball and you're transferring it into your throwing hand and it falls on the ground, it still counts as a catch. Here, the umpire said that this was not a transfer, which is fine. I get it. It's fast. But then after replay, they still said it's not a transfer. The ball, if you look where it is in that glove, could not be more inside of that pocket. That ball is so deep in that pocket, I'm surprised the ball even came out, honestly. It fell out of his hand. You can see his hand is under the glove, which is opening, and it falls out. This is the most obvious transfer rule of all time. There's literally not even an excuse. I don't even know what you can say. They review it, and he's still safe. I can't comprehend it. This one's another close one. This one's not the most egregious, but you can literally see when Freddie Freeman's glove like flexes that it's touching the runner's leg. He's still called safe. The glove flexes while the hand is still very clearly above the base, meaning that the glove tagged the runner before the runner tagged the base. He should be out. They called him safe. This one's not the end of the world, I don't think. The next one, however, is from the same game, and this one is the end of the world. The runner is rounding third base. The catcher has the ball, throws it to the pitcher. The runner slides in. The pitcher does not tag him. He's called out on the field. Whatever, he's called out on the field. We'll go to replay. We'll overturn What do you mean what do you mean call stands? He did not touch him. You can see from above, he didn't touch him. You can see from the side, he didn't touch him. The only time he touches him is on the shoulder. And if you overlay this one with this one, you can tell that by the time the shoulder was touched, he was very clearly touching home plate. If he doesn't touch the arm, which he doesn't, because you can tell from this camera angle right here, he cannot be out. However, they called him out, and I don't know why. They kept him out. It's not even close. It's really not. He didn't touch him. Speaking of not touching him, we have another one with Trey Turner. And this is going to be the last one because, as I'm sure we all love watching these horrible calls in the sport that we all love, this one is just too far. The second baseman of the Brewers tags Trey Turner, except he very clearly doesn't tag Trey Turner. Like, very, very clearly. He's called out. He remains out. Where is the tag? This is the most obvious swing and miss of all time. Paul Skeens is basically pitching right now with how many swings and misses are happening. He does not tag Trey Turner. There is no way he tags Trey Turner. Why is Trey Turner and Freddie Freeman involved in like 3/4 of these? I don't know. But these ghost tags are the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. There is no touching of Trey Turner. Either way, with that being said, if you want to hear me complain about the umpires more, I have this video and this video that you can watch on screen right now because I've complained about umpires a lot. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next video.